Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to continue to work our way through the whole squash chapter on Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's cookbook. We've done quite a few. There's still a couple more to go after this one, I think. Oh, there's still, yeah, like maybe 3 recipes after this that we haven't done. But today we're going to be making squash and Fontina casserole pudding. As she says in the book, squash casseroles are a dime a dozen. Everybody has one. Their parents make it. They've been making it their whole lives, at least here in the South. You get them a lot in the summer because squash is plentiful. She said this one is different. So we'll see what we think about it. But it starts out a lot like the squash and onions that we made already. So I'll link that up here because we're not going to show you the initial cooking of the squash because we're going to cook this squash before we put it in a casserole and bake it. So we're going to cook it on the stovetop. I have some bacon grease in my pot. She says to use a 6-quart Dutch oven. I made bacon this morning, so I used bacon, but she said you can use butter. A fine substitute. If you're vegetarian, use your favorite flavorful fat. I'm sure it'll be fine. But I'm going to go put this on the stove, and we're going to cook onions. So I'm going to get this warm first before I put the onions in. We're going to cook these onions. They are halved and sliced thin, not too thin, just not too thick. It'll be fine. And then garlic, which is something different. There was no garlic in the squash and onions. This garlic I chopped up in a food processor and froze it in approximately 1 tablespoon scoops. So that's what I'm going to use in here. I'm going to cook this until this is translucent, and then we'll show you adding what we add to it over there on the stove, or maybe even over here. We'll see what we want to do with the cameras. But this is going to take a little while because we don't do anything else until the onions are translucent. So I'm going to go put it over medium heat and cook it for a little while. You can't see this, but that's okay. These onions are starting to turn translucent. It smells delicious because onions and garlic. All we're going to do is add a few things, put it back on the stove. We're adding quite a lot of squash. I sliced them mostly. She doesn't say to do half moons or round. She just says sliced about 1/4 of an inch thick. Most of mine are just rounds because they were relatively thin. They're yellow zucchini and green zucchini, so they don't get big on one end like a crookneck squash does. So I just sliced them in rounds, mostly. The big one I sliced in half rounds. To this, we're going to add salt and pepper. That's good. And then what I had to do after the rain stopped was I got some fresh rosemary and sage and chopped those up finely. So now these are going to go back over medium heat. She says about 40 minutes, but we're looking for pretty much the same thing as with the squash and onions that we made, where it's going to be cooked down, release its liquid, dry out, and take on a deep golden hue. That took us a long time last time. I might have to turn the heat up because I do not want to spend 3 hours doing this part. So we're going to start at medium and we'll see what happens. But when that's done, we'll be back. I have some cheese to grate while this happens. I have cooked this for about 40 minutes, which is good, but I did let it go at a couple notches above medium, so about medium high on my stove until all of the liquid kind of boiled away, and let it go a couple times where the bottom was getting brown stuff stuck to it, which, you know, maybe you can see, but now the liquid that's still in it has started to dissolve that into our dish, which is great. That's what you want. That's good flavor. Now we're going to add the Fontina. I'm going to go ahead and measure this because I didn't measure it before, but I want to see, normally I would probably just put all of this in there, but I kind of want to measure it just to see how much it is and if I should or not. But I've just grated this while I was waiting. You can do other things while the liquid boils out, but once that stops, you kind of need to pay attention. So it's very cooked down. I'm going to use most of it. I'll leave a little bit, whatever. And we're just supposed to mix this in while it is still hot, because this cheese will melt. Now, Fontina is in the name of this casserole, but she does say you could use Swiss or white American. You just want something that's going to melt, kind of like this did already in the heat. And this is definitely going to be sort of a pudding consistency. You can kind of tell already that it's, since it's very cooked down, it will not be lumpy at all. All right, now we need to let this cool off a little bit. So I'm going to move that onto my granite countertop. That'll be fine. Do not do that if you do not have a natural stone countertop. Don't want to break it. And I'm going to prepare my pan. I have a 9x13 casserole dish. I'm just using a Pyrex clear one. You can use whatever you like. Hers is maybe prettier, whatever. And some butter, which I'm going to spread relatively thickly, because this is a lot of butter and there was a measurement for it, so normally I would just butter it till I think it's good, but I used the amount that she says. I'm going to wash my hands. And I used salted butter for that because that's what I had that was soft. Whatever. It's fine. And now, I've never done this part before, but we're going to dust the inside of this with some cornmeal. There's a measurement, so I'm just going to put it all in there and try to get it kind of like when you butter and flour a cake pan, just to get it all over that butter. Without spilling too much of it. My oven is now heated to 350 degrees, so it's all ready. All right, that will have to do. Okay. Now that this has had a chance to cool slightly, it's not steaming anymore. I'm going to hope that it is not going to immediately cook my egg because it's time to put the egg in. A little bit of steam. I switched back to my silicone spatula because I knew I would have to kind of scrape it all out of here. So I can touch the pan, so it's probably fine. This egg will sort of help it bind together a little bit. And she doesn't say to mix it up, to like beat up the egg first. So we're just gonna stir it in. There we go. And all we have to do now is put it in our prepared pan, which is always fun with just two hands. Got most of it out of there, and I'm just gonna spread this pretty evenly. She says you can bake these in individual ramekins. She says about 6, I think. No, 8 6-ounce ramekins. And bake them a little bit less, but I think that is pretty good right there. And we don't have to put anything on top of this because the cheese is already all in it. So I don't know. We are going to put this in the 350-degree oven for 30 to 45 minutes. You're looking for a pretty brown on top and around the edges. So you want it just pretty brown all the way across. There is a picture that she references in here. I'll include that later with my pictures, and hopefully mine will look like that. We'll see. So we'll see you in 30 to 45 minutes and let you know how long mine takes and let you know what we think. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make squash and Fontina casserole pudding from Vivian Howard's cookbook, Deep Run Roots. Since I planted some zucchini and have been successful in growing it, I'm working my way through the squash section. So you'll have seen a lot of squash videos by now. Anyway, this started out an awful lot like the squash and onions that I made previously, and I don't see any reason why you would need to cook the onions first and then add the squash. I don't think the squash and onions does that. Let me just verify that. Yeah, they just throw everything in at the beginning with that. I don't think it made a huge difference to cook the onions first for a while and then add the squash and everything. Whatever. It did end up very cooked down, just like the squash and onions, but I think that was intentional. It's that plus some garlic, plus some herbs, and definitely some cheese and an egg, and baked up. It's delicious. I like this better than I like just plain squash and onions. The herbs add a little extra flavor. The garlic adds a little extra flavor. And of course the cheese. Cheese makes everything better in my opinion. So of course I liked it. My husband loved it. My son liked it. We ate it hot out of the oven. She does say to serve it warm. Oh, I baked mine for 45 minutes to get a nice brown crust on top. It was not done at 30 minutes. There was not really any browning. At 40 minutes, we probably could have called it done, but I went for a full 45. But you can pull it out whenever because basically everything is cooked by then. So if you don't want it really brown on top, just pull it out. It is definitely unlike any other squash casserole I've ever made. Usually those are kind of creamy, have some sort of cream of soup in them or something to make it creamy like that. I think I prefer this. We'll have to try another one. If we manage to continue getting enough squash, I'll have to try a different recipe too to see what we prefer. But I think this is my favorite so far. The cornmeal on the outside kind of makes it, I think it helps it not to stick, just like when you put flour on a baking dish before you pour in a cake. It helps it not stick. But it also gets a nice little crunch on the outside on those bits. So I like that too. Yeah. If you've tried this, please let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. And if you've enjoyed watching me make this, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends, and come back and watch me make something else next week.